So you're bringing up the fourth quarter stats in play. And I'll ask you, Ryan, what is the most concerning thing that you are seeing from Brock Purdy at this point?
Well, I was trying to find the stats on that fourth quarter. I have it somewhere, but the biggest thing that's concerning me right now. Well, let's start off with a question. Let me start off with a question. When you think Dak Prescott, what do you think about, Jesse? Like what
Like,
comes to mind?
what's the media narrative, or what do I think about? I think those are two different things.
Well, I think, what do the 49er fans think about Dak Prescott? What's the overall
Oh, they think
impression of
he's
him?
not clutch. They
Think
think
he's
he's a
not?
turnover machine.
Yeah, yep. So Dak Prescott has the same amount of attempts. I think they're 3 different than Brock Purdy, and he has the same amount of interceptions. So the feeling that people get about Dak Prescott, I mean, the numbers are the same with Brock Purdy. But the numbers that really concern me, and Matt brought up the fourth quarter numbers. I'm trying to find them. I don't have them, but the numbers I do have that concern the heck out of me is Brock Purdy is ranked third out of all the starting quarterbacks in turnover worthy plays. He's also passing to the most wide open receivers in the NFL. So the fact that he's third in turnover worthy plays and
That
passing to
trend is
them,
still continuing, the wide receiver one from last year.
yes,
Wow.
yes. I mean, go watch the tape too. Go watch the tape. I mean, look at the passes he completes to Brandon Ayuk. He is,
I get
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
I will say that there have been some pretty good tight window throws he's made. Now, that doesn't mean that's the trend, right? The trend says he's throwing to the most wide open receivers on a regular basis. I did not know that that was still a statistic. I know that last year it was. I didn't realize it was still in place, but that's good to know. Okay.
Do you know who the most wide open receiver in the NFL is?
Most wide open receiver in the whole NFL? Is it Brandon Ayuk?
Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
Brandon Ayuk. So that's who Brock Purdy's passing to, yet he's third out of the only quarterbacks that are worse than him that are starting quarterbacks is Desmond Ritter and Mac Jones as far as turnover worthy plays.
Yeah, that's not
That's
good
a
company.
concern. And the thing is, Brock is 20th and 20, I think he's 22nd in the passing attempts. So he's not being asked to pass a lot. If that number increases, which happens in games when you're behind, you have to pass to catch up, then you can expect more turnovers. And I think that's what we're seeing at the end of these games. Now, Brock is young, and I haven't like completely come to a conclusion on who Brock Purdy is as a quarterback yet. I'm with you on that.
It's impossible
Yeah,
for
I
anybody
need
to
like
come. It's too
yeah,
early.
I
Yeah.
need 2 or 3 seasons on that before I declare anything on any quarterback. And that's why I thought it was so ridiculous to write off Trey Lance after 3.5 games. Absolutely ridiculous. So I'm not going to do that to Brock Purdy even after 16 games. But the trend we're seeing right now is sketch. Now he's young again. Maybe this will develop and change as he matures as a quarterback and ages. But right now in this Super Bowl window, right? That's the reason we went with Brock Purdy because we're in a Super Bowl window. We don't have time for Trey Lance to develop. We got to win now. Well, this is what we're seeing from this win now quarterback, and it's definitely concerning.
Yeah, it most certainly is concerning. And this was, I think it was the week of the Miami game when we found out that Jimmy Garoppolo was essentially done for the season. A lot of people knew that I liked Purdy coming into the draft, and that I had watched a lot of Brock Purdy because of that. And I had. And they said, "What are we getting in Brock Purdy?" And I mentioned all the good things that we were getting, but the one thing that I did say is the things that you don't like about Jimmy G are, well, one, he's flat-footed in the pocket. I mean, he's not getting away from anybody. Heavy-footed, I should say, heavy-footed in the pocket. And two, he makes a what the f play way too much. And you're like, dude, how does this happen? And I said, Brock Purdy is certainly not heavy footed in the pocket. He's very nimble. You're going to see him be evasive, all those things. That's great. But he does have that Jimmy Garoppolo-esque game where he's going to make what the F throws. And it's going to come out of nowhere. That's what you saw all the time in college. Now, last year, so that was him in college. Then you get into last year. The turnover worthy plays were also very high, but nobody wanted to talk about it because almost interceptions don't count. So it was a stat that we shouldn't talk about because the interceptions didn't happen. Okay, fair enough. Then we get into training camp and he's throwing a ton of interceptions there. And people equated that to, okay, he's just trying to work through getting back and figure out what he can get away with and what he can't get away with. That's fair. I mean, I think that could be an accurate take, but he has a ton of interceptions there. Then we get into the regular season. He was high in turnover worthy plays going into this 3-game stretch, but the turnovers again weren't happening, so people didn't want to hear it. And now those turnover worthy plays that have always been there are actually being caught and being taken away by the defense. And so now people are looking at it and they're concerned with it and saying, "Oh my, where is this coming from?" It has always been there. The teams just weren't taking it away. That is the difference. That is actually what's happening, because what people are saying as they're trying to like figure this whole thing out is they talk about Brock Purdy and they say, "Well, it was so good for 3 quarters. What happened in that fourth quarter?" He's the same player. Teams are just taking the ball away. Outside of the Cleveland game, that was a bit of an anomaly. You can talk about that. That whole game from beginning to end really was not very good. Last drive aside, and even in that drive, he tried to give the ball away and missed some throws. But that game was not what Brock Purdy is. The last 2 games are actually very accurate in who Brock Purdy is, and quite frankly, has always been good quarterback, playing good football, but will give the defense chances. Defense doesn't capitalize, numbers look great, 49ers win, everything's awesome. Defense does capitalize, numbers don't look so great, 49ers lose, everything's not awesome. Like that's basically what happened. Brock Purdy has not changed the last 2 weeks compared to who he's always been. The defense taking the ball away, that is the difference. They're capitalizing on those mistakes finally.
And he was honestly the same way in college. Like, even
He
though,
was.
again, I'm not going to make ultimate decisions on who Brock Purdy is yet, but if you look at who he was in college, this is kind of what we're seeing now. He's kind of a streaky player. Like, I coach basketball, right? And I know you play basketball. You know, there's some guys are just really streaky.
Mhm.
Like they'll miss like 20 in a row and then they'll make like 10 in a row, right? Like it's kind of their game. I feel like that's kind of what Brock is a little bit. He's going to get hot and he's going to be fine and do good, and then he's going to get in a rut and do what he's been doing. Again, though, I really think it's just he's more of a now he is a playmaker. He's not just
He is a playmaker.
I
I
don't
agree.
like them quarterback, but there's parts of his game that kind of reminds me of a system quarterback. Like he needs like we talked about, he needs the defense. He needs to play from up front. He needs the defense to play really well. He needs the running game to be doing really well, so he doesn't feel like he has to be that guy. Because when he feels like he needs to be that guy, that's when you see these reckless game show up for Brock Purdy. And I think that's what's going to be key for the success for the 49ers under Brock Purdy is all those other elements have to be in place for him to find real success. Because if you put him in that position where like, you're like go win the game for us, Brock, he's going to try to do too much and he's going to make dumb decisions, and that's what we've been seeing.
I th- System quarterback is interesting, and I also don't look at it as an offensive thing. I think he is, but he also isn't in this sense, and I'll try to explain. He he can play outside of structure. If
Mhm.
things don't go exactly, Jimmy Garoppolo is a good example of this, and I hate to keep using Jimmy, but this is everybody watched Jimmy play, so he always is going to be the point of reference, and he was the last quarterback here. Jimmy Garoppolo was a full system quarterback because things had to not only did the players have to be in place, but the plays had to be perfect. And if they weren't, once we got outside of read 1, read 2, it was full panic mode. Nothing was going to happen out of structure. Very rarely was something good going to happen out of structure. Usually bad things happen. Usually that's when you get the Jimmy point and he throws downfield and it's a pick and whatever.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy is different in that sense where
Right. Right.
if read 1 and read 2 aren't there, not only is he going to get to read 3, but he's also going to be able to break the pocket and get mobile, whether that's to keep his eyes downfield and make a play or run the ball, as we saw this last week, which was a nice addition. We'll talk about that later. So I don't think he's a system quarterback in the sense that the scheme has to be perfect for him.
Agreed.
I do think the other half of being a system quarterback, though, he certainly has, at least right now. And we had 2 questions about Brock Purdy, not only long term, but this year. One, is he going to be worth getting paid when talent starts getting stripped away from him? Early answer to that is no, but he's also still very young. So I'm not going to say that that is set in stone. But for this year, the answer to that is no. He can't win without all the talent being there. We've seen that. Okay. The other question was when you get to the playoffs, deep in the playoffs and into the Super Bowl potentially, and you're going up against an elite quarterback that is not going to be afraid of that defense and they're going to score at will, can Brock Purdy go toe to toe and hang with those quarterbacks? I think the answer to that is also no. And so right now, everything has to go well as far as players being healthy, the defense being top tier, in order for the 49ers to continue to put together wins. That is not Brock Purdy's fault. He is still young in his career. The 49ers expected that those things would be in place, by the way, for Brock Purdy. I doubt that they thought that Brock Purdy by himself was going to be able to go out and just carry this team. He did a great job of trying that this last week, but eventually he ran out of steam, and that should be expected for where he's at in his career at this point. So that is where we are at with Brock Purdy. The team around him does have to improve significantly if this team has any chance to win a Super Bowl.